Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode. We're going to talk about some storylines to watch for Hard Knocks. Got five good ones here for you, and then we'll touch on the opening press conference. Okay, we'll take questions and comments. This is serious. Cap mode, man. You know how we do it. It's cap mode time, cap mode season, whatever the hell you want to call it. We're in it. We're in it. All right. So, shout out to everybody that's watching live, catching this on the replay. All right. So, let's get right into the discussion here. What we want to talk about, like I said, is my top five storylines for HBO's Hard Knocks. It kicks off August 10th. Okay, so you're going to get some good coverage from the Cowboys as far as like training camp. You're going to get, the first preseason game, which is, on against the Steelers, the Hall of Fame game, and also a few other storylines. But these are my five to really keep in mind to keep your eye on. Okay, so the first one that we're going to talk about is the aging vet. Okay, when you watch HBO Hard Knocks, that they want to pick dramatic kind of storylines, and for me, the aging vet for me that they're probably going to cover, they're going to talk about is Tyron Smith. Okay, the aging vet. When you look at the lineup, we're still a relatively young team. The roster's still really young, but when you look at who is older, the one that is the oldest right now with the most star power is Tyron Smith, the aging vet. So expect him to cover that storyline. He's coming back from injury. He hasn't played a full 16 game season since 2015. Okay, so they'll follow that in HBO Hard Knocks. Tyron Smith coming back. From the surgery. Tyron Smith is saying everything is good. The surgery on his back will help with the neck and this sort of thing. So that's something I'll be watching. Will he get vet days here in training camp? Is he going to be out there day one, or is he going to be working the cords on the side? I want to see Tyron Smith in there. I mean, deep in there, as we say. Okay, so Tyron Smith, I think that'll be a storyline to watch indeed, guys. So that one is one that I'll be watching very closely. My fourth one that I want to talk about is going to be Micah Parsons. All right, so we want to talk about that because I think that's going to be one of the storylines guaranteed. Right, that's definitely going to be a storyline for HBO Hard Knocks. Micah Parsons, your highly rated draft pick, in this past draft class, which was heavily revolved around defense, and it started off with your blue chip player, Micah Parsons. So I like that pick there. I think you're going to get to watch the storyline there. They'll take a look at his behind the scenes, his family, some of the stuff that people haven't really heard about Micah Parsons, where he came from out of Pennsylvania, and these sorts of things. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. He has his son. I'm sure they'll cover that inside of Hard Knocks. They like to do character development. You know what I mean? Like HBO in general is pretty good at character development with their HBO original series. They're all about them. So expect some character development from Michael Parsons. You get some behind the scenes, this sort of thing, how he does in camp. Will they give him the green dot in for his helmet? Where will he start? Will he be at Mike linebacker? Show him, pass rushing the quarterback. I'm sure you'll see some of that. So that's going to be my fourth storyline. Michael Parsons. I think that you can't go wrong there, and I think it's something that the Cowboys fans are really interested in. Where is he? In this team, is he right out there, right out the bat, or are they going to move him in little by little? For me, I want him in there deep. All right, I want him right there on the field, making plays. Do they slowly give him that opportunity to be that play caller on defense. Like you might as well get this thing going. Can you trust LVE? Would it be? I don't think it'll even be Jalen Smith with that green dot. I think it has to be from your rookie premier guy, and it starts out here in training camp. And I think that's going to be one of the storylines that you'll definitely want to follow. There is Micah Parsons. All right, Micah Parsons. All right, my number three is going to be an interesting one here, and the HBO Hard Knocks, they always do a really good job of covering, the the guys that are long shots. You know what I mean? Your long shot player, your stories with the undrafted players. Who will it be? Who are they going to really concentrate on? I'm sure that they talk with the staff. Maybe you want to talk because they do a lot of this. There's a lot of production behind the scenes. Jerry Jones kind of touched on this. Actually, Coach McCarthy kind of touched on this in the opening press conference. They do have discussions here with HBO and this sorts of thing, how they be involved. Obviously they don't want to get in the way, but I'm sure that they do pick, the coaching staff, like, hey, who is the guy that has that potential? And for me, it's Nate Ralston, the fullback. You know what I mean? I think he has a good shot at making this team at fullback. Everybody has seen his highlights. I was high on him before this. Actually, Emory Hunt out of Football Game Plan got me hip to him back in the 2020 draft. You know what I mean? So, but now he's here with the Cowboys and trying to make the team. The other one that I think that you want to keep an eye on is your linebacker Anthony Hines, the third out of Texas A&M. He's an opt-out player, but had a lot of potential coming out of A&M. I think he is somebody that could really push one of these other bubble type of players. When you talk about like a Francis Bernard, who was more attached to the previous defensive coaching staff with Mike Nolan, but still a fan favorite. You know what I mean? But now you have this new staff, what they want, size, speed, this sorts of things. So Anthony Hines, undrafted, but I think he'll be one of the storylines that HBO Hard Knocks will follow. Like, will he make the team? They'll do the storylines. Is he gonna make plays here? Is he gonna show up when the lights turn on? We see it every year, in particular with wide receivers. Whether it's Lance Lamar, Andy Jones, whatever. Like, the storyline is there, but when they get to the preseason, the lights too bright, they don't show up. So that's the biggest thing that these undrafted guys are going to have to get through. You have to stack these training camps with strong camps, and really you've got to show up in the preseason. Mike McCarthy mentioned that they're going to give these young guys the opportunities to show what they can get because they have a full roster, 89 to 90 players right now, and they want to get a good look at some of these guys, and that'll be one of the storylines for sure that Hard Knocks is going to take a look at, your undrafted players. All right, so Nick Ralston, Anthony Hines, I think are two prime candidates. Some people may want to think about Vasher and maybe some of the other receivers, but those are my two guys there. The other one here, guys, that I'm really interested in is going to be will they this is probably going to come down to Jerry Jones, all right, and that is the coverage of Jimmy Jones Hall of Fame induction. Okay, so this year's Hall of Fame inductions, it's a 2-night deal. You're getting the 2020 class on August 8th, and you're getting the 2021 class on August 9th. Okay, so the premiere episode is on August 10th. Will they have that coverage? I'm hoping so, man. Like, you have to cover the Jimmy Johnson induction. You know what I mean? That has to be part of the Hall of Fame, of Jimmy Johnson. I will be thoroughly disappointed if that is not covered, and if it's not, this is going to be, Jerry Jones, just being like, oh no, let's cover more of the team, this sorts of thing. And we'll talk a little bit more after that about Jimmy Johnson. But I do want to see that. I do want to see that very much. I want to see how HBO Hard Knocks integrates, the camp, and then leading up to flying over to Canton, the Hall of Fame induction of Drew Pearson, Cliff Harris, and Jimmy Johnson. You know what I mean? Like, they have to do some kind of footage of that. They better, because I will be super disappointed if they don't. Okay, guys. So let me know what you think about that one there. And obviously, my number one storyline for Hard Knocks is going to be that of the captain, the leader, and that's Dak Prescott. Okay, so the storyline there will be the redemption story, coming off of his surgery and putting in the hard work. I think HBO has already done a lot of the work leading up to this. I'm pretty sure that they already have some of the backstory of Dak Prescott that they'll integrate into this. They'll cover the injury, the recovery, the rehab, and where he's at in training camp, how he looks. You know what I mean? The recovery process, I think, is very key, and the health of Dak Prescott is paramount. You know what I mean? So I'm sure they're going to take a look at that. That's the number one storyline is going to be Dak Prescott. But those are my five, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The aging veteran, Tyron Smith, that'll be one, I think. Michael Parsons, number four. Number three is your undrafted rookies. Who is HBO going to really cover and concentrate on? I like Anthony Hines or Nick Ralston, the fullback. You know what I mean? So that'll be interesting. The other reason why I do like the idea of Nick Ralston as a fullback, because it's an underdog story, to be, no doubt about that, because the Cowboys, they haven't had a true fullback here in a very, very long time. I'm talking about years. They may have had one on the roster that had the title, but not one that we really utilized out in the flats, blocking, glass-eating type of fullback. You have that in Nick Ralston. He is your glass-eating fullback, and he will catch the ball out of the backfield in the flats, and he can give you some pop there in the catching game. He's kind of like a halfback, fullback, has good size. Really opened up a lot of lanes there when he was there with the Raging Cajuns. And I think that's a good storyline to follow. And my number two was Jimmy Johnson. They have to mention this in Hard Knocks. If not, I will be super disappointed. Shooting the finger at the TV. Okay, and number one, Dak Prescott, guys. So that's where we're at there, guys. Shout out to everybody in the chat box. I appreciate everybody that has shown up live, baby. You know how we do it here. So we'll talk about a little bit of what's going on here in training camp. So they had their press conference today, and there were some interesting storylines. You know what I mean? They asked about the COVID vaccination, this sort of thing, where they're at. That's been a big to do about with the media. Michael Irvin, Beasley, you know how it is. It's gotten kind of annoying, in my opinion. So they touched on that, obviously, and they circling back to Jimmy Johnson, they asked Jerry Jones about it. What did he think? And he went on and told this crazy, long story, and didn't really answer the question of the reporter. But then he did reveal a very interesting behind the scenes story where, the day that Jimmy Johnson left the building and Barry Switzer came in, that Barry Switzer asked him, first question, why couldn't you guys, how did you two guys, F this up? You know what I mean? And that was pretty interesting for Jerry Jones to reveal that. And he did at one point get a little emotional when talking about, that first season with Jimmy Johnson. So that was revealing as well. Now, they did ask him about the induction of the Ring of Honor. Still a little bit of an awkward situation. He did say that it would not be this season. Jerry Jones did say that Jimmy wouldn't be inducted into the Ring of Honor this year. So that's kind of disappointing. But then he kind of mentioned, let him enjoy the Hall of Fame. We have other good things to talk about and this sort of thing. So, the story on that. Now, hopefully it is soon. Hopefully it's next season for sure. Hopefully, that has to get done, man. I mean, Jimmy Johnson's my coach. I grew up with him. That's my era of Cowboys. You know what I mean? I grew up as a teenager watching these guys from the bottom up, man. I went through those. I went through the end of Landry's career, and then I saw what happened with Jimmy and how they built this from the ground up. Like it was an amazing story. You know what I mean? So you have to get him in there. So that was an interesting storyline there from the opening press conference. And they asked about who's going to take over the leadership role with Sean Lee and Tyrone Crawford leaving. Mike McCarthy has a lot of confidence that there's some young guys in here that will carry the mantle. You know what I mean? And you're going to have it. But I think it's going to come from your young players, to be real. I think obviously you'll have Zach Martin as one of them. But, could Tyler Biadasz be that one, the spearheading that offensive line, on the defensive side of the ball? Who could it be? I think Trayvon Diggs certainly has that capability. You know what I mean? And Michael Parsons definitely has that alpha male leader, 300 type of deal where you go out there and I mean, we'll see though. I mean, everything is on paper. Everything that we've gone through in the off season with the workout videos, all the hype, all the BS, the draft picks. It's a clean slate for everybody now. Now you get into camp, and now it's put up or shut up. It's that time, baby. It's that time. So you know I thought it was a good press conference. It got a little bit chatty there with Jerry, but that's to be expected. They always ask him, and Jerry always says he would do anything to get to the Super Bowl. Like, that's new. He says that every year. They ask him the question every year, and he says it every year. Basically, he would sell his soul if he could, right? So, man, hopefully this will be the year. You know what I mean? The Cowboys have to do some great things, but for me, my expectations are tempered. You know what I mean? To me, I saw the bringing in McCarthy as, you got to rebuild this thing. You know what I mean? Yeah, it would be great to get to the Super Bowl. That's where we want to get to. But you go from 6-10 to, I'm kind of thinking the Cowboys can get to like 11, maybe 12 wins on the good side there. And then in the next year, you continue to build on that. You know what I mean? And I think McCarthy knows that. You had to rebuild that defense. They threw a lot of draft picks at that side of the ball because they needed it. You know what I mean? They were unbalanced. They were unbalanced when you look at offense and you look at defense. This year, you want to get to this equilibrium, right? So the offense is already here. They're already humming if that offensive line stays healthy. That's the key, right? But you get that defense a little bit closer to the middle and you have a good equilibrium, you can get excited about this team. You know what I mean? So there's definitely some good things to be excited about this team as we head to camp here. The most important thing here, guys, let's get out of here healthy and let the stars rise to the top. We need new leaders to rise up. We need new cornerstone players, young ones. You know what I mean? Because we do have some cornerstone guys that are kind of at the end of their, the star's not as bright, but you do have some guys that are up and coming where, this is a new team now. You know what I mean? Like, you're steadily getting rid of, just by attrition and age and contract, some of the Garrett, era type of players. And I think McCarthy's done a good job putting his thumbprint with his own free agents, his own draft picks, going back to last year. I think some of those guys will still be in the mix. You think about Reggie Robinson and Bradley and I think they want to give him a shot, take a look at him. And, you probably want to see if these guys can push off some of these lingering vets like Dorrance Armstrong and some of these other type of players. So I think it was a very good introduction to, training camp, Oxnard, California. And I'm ready for it, man. Shout out to everybody that is watching this live and catching this on replay. J Mac, shout out to you, brother. Thank you very much. I have them at 9-10 wins right now. Yeah. And then there's nothing wrong with that, right? That some people may think, oh, we're gonna run it, we're gonna do this and that. Like, realistically, it's gonna be a tough division. You know what I mean? It's gonna be competitive, no doubt. But I think the Cowboys have done some things where they certainly have the opportunity to win some games. To be in the conversation, to get into the tournament, like Parcells would say. So I think that's they're in good shape. Let's just get through this healthy. O-line's got to hold up through the whole season. Yeah, that's where they're going to hold up, right? So, and the other part of that is, did you do enough behind your starters? Did you improve the depth behind you to get through, 4 games or whatever? Because we know Tyron Smith will probably miss a few games. Have you done enough there with Ty Nsekhe, Josh Ball, and what can Brandon Knight give you? So I think they've upgraded that. You know what I mean? I don't think any of us want to see Terrence Steele out there, and I think Ty Nsekhe and Josh Ball right out the jump are better than him. You know what I mean? So I do feel a little bit better about that, but I still want to see our premier guys make it through the season. I want to see Tyron play a majority of the season. You know what I mean? And I want to see La'el Collins return to form. They look good. They physically look good. So that's a good start. So I think these guys are all in, man. On both sides of the ball. So I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that. A good comment here on Parsons is another Sean Lee, but healthier. Yeah, that's what you got to hope. And if he is a Sean Lee and a healthier version of him, I mean, you hit a home run right off the bat because, I mean, Sean Lee, when on the field, he was that general, right? I mean, he led that team, and when he was gone, the defense really floundered. So hopefully the Cowboys have done enough there to build on. You know what I mean? Like this defense is really, really young, and I expect them to do a lot better this year. But you're probably going to realistically, you're probably going to see a better improvement in year two with this year's rookie draft class. You know, heavy defense. Yeah. Marblin grew up in the house. Shout out to you, brother. So he likes the Tyler Coyle, the safety guy there. You know, he could be one. Obviously, that's another good name to keep an eye on there. Brian Drake, can't wait. I don't even care. I got to download HBO on my phone for a month. Well worth $10. Yeah. So definitely, man. If anything, HBO, you got to watch the Hard Knocks. You know, like I said, you know, when it got announced, I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm still, you know, we'll see how everything ends up at the end of the season. You know what I mean? If these guys start out slow or they don't quite, you know, do as well as we think, you know, as a playoff push, it will be a conversation piece as far as was Hard Knocks, you know, a piece of that puzzle. You know what I mean? So, but I'm definitely gonna be watching, man. I can't wait to see what they do. You know, a little bit behind the scenes. I want to see what Kelvin Joseph looks like. You know what I mean? So uh, the camp battles, like I said, like if you missed my camp battles on defense, go back and check that out. But I'm very interested to see how Kelvin and Nashawn Wright look. You know what I mean? And Jay Lou there at the slot position, Anthony Brown. I'm really, really hoping for a really good camp from these guys. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to. I'm going to take a lot of the reports with a grain of salt as well. You know what I mean? I think all you should too. It's good to get good news, but at the same time, we don't want to like have a knee jerk reaction. Uh, you know, negative or positive. You know what I mean? You may hear some things that aren't quite as positive as you would like, but doesn't necessarily mean it's a death blow to any player. And conversely, if you're hearing a lot of positives on undrafted guys, you gotta temper those expectations because we see it every year. They do really good in camp, they get the preseason, and they don't show up. So just a few things here for today. I'll have another. I think I'm gonna go live here tomorrow with Foots the King. So make sure you guys check back tomorrow. We're gonna cover the first day of training camp tomorrow here live on the channel. So make sure you check back here. It'll be me and Foots talking first day of training camp. So make sure you check back on that video, guys. Make sure you hit like on this video on your way out. Catch this on the replay. Pound that like button. Subscribe, guys. It's good to be back here. You know, after this dead zone season, back to regular season here covering the Cowboys, and I can't wait to talk about these with all you guys. And it's gonna be a lot of fun, guys. But that's all I have. Continue to like, subscribe, and share. I'll catch all of you for the next one. Peace, everybody.